All right, let's do Where Are They Now, presented by City Heat and Air and Natural Gas. We bring in a terrific representative for the area in the University of Tennessee. Played here at Tennessee as part of that 98 championship game, championship for Tennessee. Went on to a career in the National Football League as well after being a third-round pick of the Jacksonville Jaguars. We bring in, for Where Are They Now, presented by City Heat and Air Natural Gas, Eric Westmoreland joins us here on the new Sentinel Sports Page. Hey, Eric, Vince Ferrara and Mike Griffith. Good morning, Eric. How are you?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
We're doing great, Eric, and we appreciate you spending some time with us, Griff.
I had a chance to talk to Eric last week. He's a much better interview than he was 15 years ago when he said everything that he was supposed to say. They brought him to me. Remember when they brought you to Birmingham, Emo?
Oh, yeah, for the SEC Media Days.
The most politically correct speaker in Birmingham I have ever heard. Every opponent was going to be a great. What do you think you'll do against Vanderbilt? Oh, that's a very great opponent. We'll have to be ready for them. It was like it was almost like he was programmed by Philip Fulmer. And I guess in a way that 98 team was programmed by Philip Fulmer. Eric, what do you remember about that season? When I say 1998 Tennessee football, what jumps to your mind?
The first thing that jumps to my mind is just the togetherness. You know, all the guys were close. You know, we battled with each other, you know, on the field. But, you know, to see us off the field and to see us interact with each other, you know, a lot of people didn't know how close we really were.
Well, you know, and you certainly played close. When you and I were talking about the defense, it seemed like there wasn't a weakness. I mean, everybody had a job on that defense. The ends, the tack. I mean, there was no way to attack Tennessee. Looking back, Eric, if there was a weakness, what would it have been? What would have been the best way to play against Tennessee?
You know, looking back, I would only, you know, the one thing I would only say is, you know, if someone, you know, could attack our being aggressive, you know, because we were very aggressive. You know, we ran to the ball really well. So that was, you know, that would probably be the only thing that I could say, you know, that we would just, sometimes we would get over aggressive and we would have to hone things back a little bit. But that would probably be the only thing. Yeah,
you're probably right. And, you know, John Chavis was the defensive coordinator back then, and I would agree he was probably too aggressive. Let's go to the phone lines and bring someone in and see what they thought of the 98 team and the way John Chavis coached that. Were they too aggressive, caller?
Oh, no, they were not aggressive enough. That was the whole problem with that unit. They were just not aggressive.
Of course, it's John Chavis calling in to talk to Emo, one of the guys that he loved to coach. And Emo, you and I were talking about Coach Chavis and the way he motivated you and was able to shape you. You were a running back and a safety before you came to Tennessee and played linebacker for Coach Chavis.
Yeah, it was one of those things where when I first got in, you know, all the guys were, you know, because I weighed probably 205. All the guys were telling me, you know what, by the end of the camp, you're going to be a linebacker. So I can remember, you know, playing safety and Chief calling me in and, you know, say, hey, we're going to get you in on some of these nickel packages and things like that. And, you know, that was the last thing that I saw. You know, that was the last shot that I saw at safety. So, but it turned out to be a good deal. You know, I was coached by a great guy, you know, who's still coaching right now and still doing good things at LSU. And, you know, you could sit back and watch LSU and I get chills because, you know, they're doing some of the same stuff and they got some of the same type of guys. You know, so it's real fun to watch them.
Coach Chavis, what about Eric? You obviously had some very talented linebackers. It seemed like all of them on the 98 team did play in the NFL with Raynock and Al Wilson. But when you and I talked last night about Eric, just his versatility. I mean, as a strong side linebacker, sometimes you'd walk him up and he'd line up on a tackle. Sometimes he'd be responsible for the back, and sometimes you would have him covering wide receivers.
Well, let's start off with he was an athlete and a very fine athlete, but even a better person, student of the game. And we knew when we were recruiting that he had a chance to grow into a linebacker. If not, he could have played safety for us and still could have played safety for us. There's no question about that. But, you know, our whole philosophy was getting the 11 best on the field. And, you know, when Eric got in there as a true freshman, I mean, he made his marks first on special teams. I mean, we could. You know, by midseason, he was on every single special team, making play after play after play, and did a tremendous job there. And it was only a couple weeks in the season before we moved to strong sideline.
We're visiting with Eric Westmoreland, former Vol. Where Are They Now? Presented by City Heat and Air Natural Gas. Also joined by LSU defensive coordinator John Chavis, former Tennessee defensive coordinator, who's calling in and talking about Eric Westmoreland. Coach Chavis, real quick with you. It was great to talk to you again, by the way. But was there something off the field, an example of what Eric brought to the table, maybe in terms of intangibles outside of the football field, that you might be able to share for our listeners?
Well, I think the thing when you start talking about intangibles was his character and who he really is. I mean, as I said, everybody knows what kind of football player that he was, but he was even a much better person, a student of the game. He understood football. He knew how to play. He knew how to make adjustments, and it was important to him. And you're talking about the '98 season, and if I'm not mistaken, and I'm sure I'm right, he was the only sophomore that started for us that year. And, we were in off season. He had played so well for us as a freshman. We were in off season and deciding, do we want to, move some people around and make sure again that we're getting our 11 best on the field. And that's when Al Wilson made the transition to middle linebacker his senior year. And, we didn't miss a beat of that position when Eric stepped up and started the entire year for us as a sophomore. And, let me tell you, it was a pretty important Florida game that year that, he had an ankle. We were not sure whether he's going to play or not. And, he got it done and never missed a play. Never missed a play and did a tremendous job. And being able to play, on an ankle that, 75, 80%, maybe more would not have played on, and being able to get it done in that tight game was a big part of that season.
Well, Coach Chavis, I want to personally thank you for calling in. I know Eric appreciates it as well, and obviously you're in the Baton Rouge market and you're wearing LSU colors. But the thing you told me last night when I asked you about coming on was you said these are your guys, and the fact that you still take care of your guys and you still want to be there for your guys. I think, to me, after covering you, I think that's a secret of why your guys always played hard for you. Probably why those guys at LSU still play hard for you.
Well, it's important. It's important to me, if you're attached forever. And there's not anything that I would not do for Eric Westmoreland as well as a lot of other guys. And he's well deserving, and it makes me proud to be able to talk about him and share a little bit about him. But certainly to talk to him and Eric, I hope to get to see you soon. If you're not doing anything next Friday, Eric, we got a charity golf tournament. I'd love for you to come out and visit with you a little bit before we play. We're going to play in the afternoon at Avalon for the Tennessee Children's Home. If you get a chance, run by. I'd love to see you.
Okay, anytime, Coach.
Thanks, Coach. Have a great Memorial Day weekend, Coach.
Thank you.
That is John Chavis, nice enough to join us. So, Eric, what did you think of that?
That was great. That was a pleasant surprise right there. I haven't talked to him in a while, but like I said, he's a stand-up guy. He's one of those coaches that, if he says what he's going to do, he's always going to have his players back, and that's one of the things that all the guys appreciate about him.
Yeah, and the 98 guys have kind of stuck together, and it's been kind of hard, Eric. And and I know you don't follow Tennessee football as closely as obviously when you played, but how have the 98 guys gotten through this? Because I know you guys still talk, and there's obviously been a lot of changes over there at Tennessee.
Yeah, it's been a lot of changes, but you got to realize a lot of programs, go through changes. Alabama went through a lot of changes before Saban got there and got the ship rolling. So there's plenty of teams that have gone through changes. Pertaining to us, the guys in 98, we're close. We talk all the time about the team, about what's going on at Tennessee, things that, the recruits they're getting in and things like that. So, we're always going to be in tune of what's happening up there.
Yeah, and now you're in tune with Lady Vol softball, and I saw you at the stadium a few times. Turns out you're Tori Lewis's stepfather, and of course, Tori very proud that she has a famous stepfather in Knoxville. What's it like going to the ballpark and sitting there? Did any of your glory years come back up, or is it all about Tori while you're there?
It's all about Tori. I tell you what, it's hot. It's very hot. But it's all about her. And I tell her all the time. I try to stay low key as much as I can. Every now and then somebody will spot me out and things like that. But I pretty much try to focus on her and and let her have the limelight.
What have been your observations of Ralph Weekly? You know, he's a guy who actually coached football for a while. His son was a Division III All-American. You've had a couple of exchanges with Coach Weekly. I know he speaks highly of you, and just about how disciplined his program is.
Well, and that speaks for itself. You know, they've been, you know, in the World Series, you know, year in and year out, they're contenders. You know, he's one of those coaches who demands, you know, highly from his girls, you know, and I think you see that every time they play. You know, like I say, I tell Tori all the time, you know, you have to be one of those players who produces, and I think that's one of the main things that he wants out of all his players. He wants them to produce.
We're visiting with Eric Westmoreland, former Vol, for Where Are They Now?, presented by City Heat and Air and Natural Gas. Eric, let's talk about your time in the NFL. Third-round pick of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Talk about what your standout experience is in the National Football League.
Oh, gosh, just, you know what, just playing against a lot of different guys that I grew up watching. You know, got a chance to play against Emmitt Smith when he was, you know, his last couple of years in Dallas. You know, it's that type of thing that gets you to have those great memories. You know, but some of the fondest memories was playing against old teammates from the University of Tennessee. There at one point in time, you know, Buffalo had, you know, 4 or 5 guys, you know, from Tennessee on that team. You know, and when I was in Jacksonville, we played against them, and you know, just lining up against those guys, and you know, having some laughs and things like that. So that was real, you know, great.
Well, Eric, we really appreciate it. Great to catch up with you. I know it was neat for our listeners to hear from you as well, and I'm glad you enjoyed that little surprise.
He's a much better interview now than he was when he was at Tennessee. I can say that.
Eric, have a great weekend. We really appreciate it. Take care.
All right, thank you. See you guys.
Yeah, right. We'll see you at the ballpark, Emo.